You and I both know something deep down. Feelings are powerful, but they're not always truthful. Feelings can be liars. They whisper excuses. They magnify fears. They tell you not today. They convince you you're tired. You're not ready. You can start tomorrow. Feelings will seduce you into mediocrity if you let them. But the plan, the vision, the standard you set for your life, that is real. That's the roadmap that will take you where you say you want to go, no matter how you feel in the moment. If you let feelings run your life, you'll never rise. You'll stay stuck because feelings fluctuate. One day you're on fire, the next day you're drained. One day you're hungry, the next day you're lazy. One day you're confident, the next day you're filled with doubt. But a plan doesn't care about your moods. A plan doesn't bend to your emotions. A plan is the architecture of discipline, the backbone of commitment, and the contract you've made with yourself about who you're becoming. So what do? You kill the feelings that weaken you. Not kill joy, not kill passion. No, you kill the weak emotions, the ones that sabotage your potential. You silence the voice that says, I don't feel like it. Because the truth is, champions act regardless of how they feel. Winners show up whether it's raining or shining, whether they're tired or rested, whether they're motivated or not. They show up because the plan demands it. Listen, your destiny is built on execution, not emotion. Every time you push past the feeling and stick to the plan, you're building a new identity. You're proving to yourself, I am someone who follows through. That's how confidence is born, not from wishing, not from waiting to feel good, but from stacking evidence that you are relentless, unshakable, unstoppable. So next time your feelings try to hijack you, ask yourself, do I want to be ruled by emotion or do I want to live by design? Do I want to be a prisoner of mood or a master of my future? The choice is always yours. And kill the feelings. Stick to the plan and watch how far, how fast, and how powerfully your life transforms. Feelings are temporary, commitment is permanent. When you wake up in the morning, the very first thing you notice is your state. Some days you feel energized, some days you feel sluggish, some days you feel like conquering the world, and other days you just want to crawl back under the covers. These are feelings, and they come and go like the weather. They are shaped by how much sleep you had, what you ate, how much stress is pressing on you, and even what someone said to you yesterday. But commitment is different. Commitment is not about how you feel in the moment. It's about the promise you've made to yourself, the standard you've declared for your life, the line you refuse to cross no matter what. If you let feelings dictate your life, you'll be pulled in 1,000 directions, but if you lean on commitment, you'll stand firm no matter the storm. Feelings tell you, stay in bed, while commitment tells you, get up. You have a plan to execute. Feelings whisper, you're tired, you can skip the workout. But commitment shouts back, you made a decision to become stronger, so follow through. Feelings will try to negotiate with you, but commitment is the non-negotiable. When you look at the people who rise to greatness, you'll notice something very clear. They don't always feel like doing what they do. They don't always feel like training, preparing, practicing, or grinding day after day, but they're committed. They've tied themselves to a vision so strongly that feelings don't have the power to pull them off course. The average person makes choices based on mood, and their life reflects that inconsistency. The extraordinary person makes choices based on commitment, and their life reflects consistency, progress, and results. Imagine two people with the same dream. One allows feelings to steer the wheel, the other anchors to commitment. The first person starts, stops, starts again, loses momentum, doubts themselves, and never breaks through. The second person keeps moving regardless of emotion and stacks small wins and over time builds unstoppable momentum. This is the difference between temporary motivation and permanent transformation. Commitment is what carries you when the motivation is gone. Because let's be honest, motivation feels amazing, but it's fleeting. You hear a speech, watch a video, read a book, and you're on fire for a day or two. But then life happens. The alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and motivation is nowhere to be found. The workload piles up and motivation doesn't answer your calls. But commitment shows up every time. Commitment doesn't need to feel good. It just needs to be honored. And every time you honor commitment over feelings, you strengthen your will, you forge resilience, you carve into your mind that you can trust yourself, because that's the real gift of commitment. It builds self-trust. Every time you say, I'll do it, and then you do it, no matter how you feel, you reinforce that your word means something. And when your word to yourself means something, you become powerful beyond measure. Feelings are like waves. They rise, they fall, they crash, and then they disappear. If you build your life on feelings, it's like trying to build a house on shifting sand. One moment you're up, and the next moment you're down, and your foundation keeps crumbling. But commitment is bedrock. It's the ground that doesn't move. When you declare, I am committed to my vision, my health, my family, my growth, my financial future, that commitment becomes the solid foundation you can stand on no matter how stormy the weather gets. Life will throw challenges, setbacks, and chaos your way. Feelings will tell you to quit, to slow down, to surrender, but commitment will remind you of your why. Commitment will pull you forward when everything else is pushing you back. And this is where true character is revealed, not when it's easy, not when you feel great, but when you don't feel like it all and you still follow through. Think about athletes, leaders, entrepreneurs, creators. Do you think they always feel ready? Do you think they always feel confident? No. Many times they feel fear, doubt, fatigue, and uncertainty, but their commitment overrides the emotion. They don't wait for the perfect feeling. They act because they're committed to the process and the outcome. Success is not about doing what you feel like. It's about doing what's required. And once you understand that feelings are temporary, you stop giving them so much power. You start treating them like clouds passing by, acknowledging them but not letting them control the direction of your life. Commitment, on the other hand, becomes the compass. It tells you where you're going, and it keeps pointing you back to the path even when feelings try to pull you away. When you live with commitment, you no longer need to bargain with yourself every day. You don't waste energy asking, do I feel like it? That question doesn't even exist anymore. The decision has already been made in advance, and all that's left is execution. This saves you energy, focus, and time, because indecision drains more energy than hard work ever will. When you're committed, you eliminate the debate and you just do what's necessary. Over time, this becomes who you are. It becomes your identity. You're no longer the person who starts and stops based on mood. You're the person who follows through because you're committed. And identity is destiny. When you see yourself as committed, you act in alignment with that vision, and your entire life begins to shift. Commitment also teaches you mastery, because sticking to something long enough, regardless of feelings, forces growth. It forces you to push through boredom, through discomfort, through resistance, and on the other side is skill, strength, and greatness. The person who only works when they feel like it will never break through barriers, because the moment they feel resistance, they quit. But the person who is committed keeps going, breaks through, and discovers a level of ability they never knew existed. This is how champions are made, not by feelings, but by the permanence of commitment. Discipline creates freedom, not emotions. People often confuse freedom with the absence of structure, the ability to do whatever they want, whenever they feel like it. They think freedom means waking up whenever, eating whatever, working whenever, living however their mood dictates. But that's not freedom. That's chaos dressed up as freedom. And real freedom doesn't come from feelings, it comes from discipline. Because discipline builds control, and control is what sets you free. Discipline is the structure that allows you to live on your terms, not the terms dictated by impulses and moods. Discipline says you own your time. Instead of time owning you, you own your body. Instead of cravings owning you, you own your money instead of debt owning you. Freedom without discipline is an illusion, because eventually the lack of discipline becomes a cage. The person who eats whatever they feel like ends up enslaved to poor health. The person who spends whenever they feel like ends up enslaved to debt. The person who works whenever they feel like ends up enslaved to mediocrity. On the surface, it looks like freedom, but it's actually prison. Discipline is what breaks you out of that prison and gives you true freedom. Discipline gives you freedom because it creates consistency, and consistency builds momentum. When you discipline yourself to follow a routine, to stick to a plan, to practice habits daily, you start compounding results. At first, the discipline feels heavy. Waking up early feels like a burden. Saying no to temptations feels restrictive. Sticking to your budget feels uncomfortable. But over time, the discipline creates outcomes you love, energy in your body, confidence in your character, security in your finances. And those outcomes give you more choices, more power, more freedom. The person disciplined with their health has the freedom to enjoy life without limitations. The person disciplined with their money has the freedom to travel, invest, and create opportunities. The person disciplined with their work has the freedom to choose projects, build businesses, and impact others. Discipline doesn't take freedom away, it multiplies it, but only if you stay consistent long enough to see the payoff. Emotions, on the other hand, are short-term. They crave instant gratification. Emotions say, eat that cake now, skip that workout now, spend that money now, quit when it gets hard now. Discipline is long-term. It sees beyond the immediate craving and chooses the action that builds a better future. Discipline is the parent that says no to the child throwing a tantrum. Your feelings are like that child, loud, demanding, irrational, and your discipline is the parent saying no because it knows what's best for the future. This is why so many people remain stuck. They listen to the child of their feelings instead of the authority of their discipline. They mistake emotional impulses for freedom and then wonder why they feel trapped in the same cycle. True freedom requires the strength to say no in the moment so you can say yes to the future. Discipline creates freedom because it builds trust with yourself. Every time you follow through on what you said you would do, even when you didn't feel like it, you strengthen your identity as someone who can be counted on. That trust is freedom because it means you no longer doubt yourself. You don't have to wonder if you'll follow through. You know you will because discipline has been ingrained in you. Think about how much energy people waste negotiating with themselves. Should I go to the gym today? Should I wake up early tomorrow? Should I save this money or spend it? That constant negotiation drains willpower and leaves them exhausted before they even act. Discipline eliminates the negotiation. The decision is made in advance, so there's no wasted energy. You just act. And that saves you time, focus, and mental space, and which is a form of freedom. Discipline also creates freedom by teaching you mastery. You cannot master anything. Your craft, your body, your finances, your relationships without discipline. Mastery requires repetition, practice, consistency, and the willingness to keep showing up no matter how you feel. At first, and discipline feels like chains, but those chains forge strength. And once you master something, you earn the freedom to do things most people cannot. A disciplined athlete earns the freedom to dominate their sport. A disciplined musician earns the freedom to play at a level that moves hearts. A disciplined entrepreneur earns the freedom to design their lifestyle. None of that comes from emotion. It comes from discipline. Feelings don't build mastery. Discipline builds mastery, and mastery unlocks freedom. Discipline gives you freedom because it separates you from the average. Most people are ruled by their emotions. They only work when they feel like it, only eat right when they're motivated, only save money when it's convenient, only commit when it's easy. That keeps them stuck in cycles of regret, frustration, and limitation. But when you build discipline, you step into a different category. You're no longer average. You're no longer reactive. You're proactive, intentional, and in control. That control is freedom. Freedom is not the absence of responsibility. It's the ability to carry responsibility with strength because you've trained yourself with discipline. Discipline also creates freedom in your mind. When you lack discipline, your mind is noisy with guilt, procrastination, self-doubt, and unfinished tasks. You feel weighed down by everything you've avoided, everything you've promised but not delivered, everything you've left incomplete. That mental clutter is heavy. Discipline clears it out. When you live with discipline, your mind is lighter because you know you've handled what matters. You know you've done the work, honored your commitments, taken care of your priorities. That peace of mind is freedom. No amount of emotion-driven indulgence can create that peace. Only discipline can. Consider someone who disciplines themselves to wake up early and start their day with intention. They gain hours of focused time that others waste. That extra time gives them freedom to pursue their goals, learn new skills, or build their dreams. Consider someone who disciplines themselves with their finances. They may feel restricted in the short term, but years later they have the freedom to make choices others cannot. Consider someone who disciplines themselves with their health. They may resist cravings in the moment, but in the future they have the freedom to live without disease or limitations. Everywhere you look, and discipline is the bridge between restriction today and freedom tomorrow. The more disciplined you are in the short term, the freer you are in the long term. Discipline is also contagious. When you build it in one area of your life, it spills into others. The discipline to work out builds discipline in your career. The discipline to manage your money builds discipline in your relationships. The discipline to speak the truth builds discipline in your leadership. Each area reinforces the others until discipline becomes who you are. And when discipline becomes your identity, freedom is inevitable. Because you've created a life where you are no longer at the mercy of impulses, cravings, or fleeting moods. You've created a life designed by choice, not by chance. Identity is built through consistent action, not moods. Who you believe you are is not shaped by what you say in moments of excitement. It's shaped by the patterns you repeat day after day. Every action is a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. When you take consistent action, regardless of how you feel, you cast vote after vote for an identity of strength, resilience, and discipline. When you let moods decide your actions, you cast votes for inconsistency, weakness, and self-doubt. Over time, these votes accumulate and form the story you tell yourself about who you are. If you want to transform your identity, you must transform your habits. You must build consistency that proves to yourself you can be trusted, because identity is not declared, it is demonstrated. You cannot simply say, I am disciplined, while living inconsistently. You cannot say, I am committed, while quitting when the feeling disappears. Identity is earned through proof, through action, through showing up repeatedly even when the mood is gone. Most people get trapped because they confuse mood with identity. They feel motivated one day and say, this is who I am now, I'm a new person. But when the mood fades, they stop acting and then they feel like a failure. The truth is, and the mood was never going to last. Moods are temporary, but identity is permanent. And identity is carved into your nervous system through repetition. Think about how you learned to walk, talk, or ride a bike. You didn't become that person in one attempt. You became that person by repeating the action over and over until it became part of you. It's the same with discipline, resilience, leadership, strength, or any identity you want to embody. You build it by consistent action, not by waiting for the right feeling. Feelings are the spark, but consistency is the fire that keeps burning. Every time you act in alignment with the identity you want, you reinforce it. If you want to be fit, every workout reinforces that identity. If you want to be a leader, every tough conversation reinforces that identity. If you want to be successful, every disciplined work session reinforces that identity. The more consistent the actions, the stronger the identity becomes. Eventually, it no longer feels like effort. It feels like who you are. The athlete doesn't have to think, I need to train today, because training is who they are. The writer doesn't have to force themselves to write, because writing is who they are. The leader doesn't have to remind themselves to lead, because leadership is who they are. But it didn't start that way. It started with actions repeated consistently until the actions shape the identity. When you allow moods to dictate your behavior, your identity becomes fragile. One day you see yourself as disciplined, the next day as lazy. One day you feel unstoppable, the next day worthless. This roller coaster creates confusion, doubt, and lack of confidence. But when you act consistently, regardless of mood, your identity stabilizes. You begin to see yourself clearly. You begin to trust yourself deeply. And that self-trust is the foundation of unshakable confidence. Confidence doesn't come from feeling good. It comes from knowing you will act even when you don't feel good. That knowledge only comes from consistent action. Identity is also contagious. The way you act consistently shapes how others see you. If you consistently show up on time, people begin to see you as reliable. If you consistently speak the truth, people see you as trustworthy. If you consistently perform with excellence, people see you as competent. Your actions, repeated over time, create a reputation, and that reputation is the external reflection of your identity. But it all starts internally. You must decide who you want to be, and then you must align your actions with that decision again and again until it becomes unshakable. This is how transformation happens. Not in a burst of inspiration, but in the quiet daily choices that stack over months and years until they redefine who you are. Consistency also rewires your brain. Every repeated action strengthens neural pathways, making the action easier and more automatic. This is how habits form, and habits are the building blocks of identity. If you consistently wake up early, your brain adapts until it feels natural. If you consistently push through resistance, your brain adapts until perseverance feels natural. If you consistently delay gratification, your brain adapts until patience feels natural. Over time, these consistent choices sculpt your identity. You no longer have to try to be disciplined, resilient, or patient. You simply are because your actions have conditioned your identity into existence. It's important to understand that identity is always under construction. You are constantly voting with your actions, whether you realize it or not. Every time you follow through, you're casting a vote for the identity you want. Every time you break your word, you're casting a vote for the identity you don't want. The danger comes when people underestimate the power of small actions. They think missing one workout, skipping one commitment, breaking one promise doesn't matter. But each small action is part of a pattern, and the pattern is what builds identity. You don't become undisciplined overnight. You become undisciplined through repeated small compromises. You don't become resilient overnight. You become resilient through repeated small acts of persistence. The little actions are never little because they accumulate into who you are. Moods, however, will always try to disrupt this process. Some days you'll feel inspired, others you'll feel discouraged. Some days you'll feel confident, others you'll feel afraid. If you base your identity on these fluctuations, you'll never stabilize. But if you anchor your identity to consistent action, moods lose their power. You can feel tired and still act. You can feel afraid and still act. You can feel unmotivated and still act. And every time you do, you reinforce the identity of someone who is greater than their moods. That is the identity that wins in the long run. Your life today is a reflection of the actions you've been consistent with in the past. If you've consistently given in to moods, your identity will reflect inconsistency and lack of trust in yourself. If you've consistently honored your commitments, your identity will reflect strength, clarity, and self-respect. The beautiful thing is you can shift your identity at any moment by shifting your actions. You don't need to wait for a new mood. You don't need to wait for motivation. You don't need to wait for the right circumstances. You simply need to start acting consistently in alignment with the identity you want, and the identity will eventually become yours. Success belongs to those who act despite how they feel. The world is full of people waiting for the right mood, the right moment, the right burst of inspiration before they take action. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel confident. They wait to feel motivated. And as they wait, opportunities pass them by. Success doesn't wait for feelings. Success responds to action. The people who rise to the top are not the ones who always feel like doing the work. They're the ones who do the work regardless of how they feel. They understand that feelings are fleeting, but actions create results. When the alarm goes off early in the morning and every part of your body says stay in bed, the one who chooses to get up and execute gains an edge. When the resistance of fear says don't make that call, don't give that presentation, don't take that risk, the one who takes action anyway moves forward while everyone else stands still. Success rewards the disciplined doer, not the emotional drifter. Feelings will try to sabotage progress at every stage. At the beginning, they whisper excuses like you're not ready, it's not the right time, start tomorrow. In the middle, they shout louder with doubt, fatigue, and frustration. Near the end, they tempt you with shortcuts, telling you it's good enough. You don't need to finish strong. If you listen, you'll never break through. But if you act in defiance of those feelings, you train yourself to rise above them. Every time you act despite fear, you train courage. Every time you act despite fatigue, you train endurance. Every time you act despite doubt, you train confidence. Success is less about talent or luck than it is about this ability to act when it's hardest, to push when it would be easier to stop. This is the dividing line between those who succeed and those who stay stuck. Think about history's greatest performers, athletes, leaders, and creators. Do you believe they always felt confident, energized, or inspired? No. They felt fear before the game, pressure before the speech, resistance before sitting down to create. And the difference is they acted anyway. They stepped on the field, they took the stage, they picked up the pen. Action shifted their state. Action created momentum. Action carried them into success while others were still waiting to feel ready. Waiting is the enemy of success because the perfect feeling rarely comes. The secret is that feelings often follow action, not the other way around. You don't wait to feel motivated to work out. You start moving and motivation shows up once momentum builds. You don't wait to feel confident to speak. You start speaking and confidence grows as words flow. You don't wait to feel inspired to write. You start writing and inspiration awakens in the process. Action is the trigger and success belongs to those who understand this truth. When you act despite how you feel, you also separate yourself from the crowd. Most people give in to moods, so they live average lives. The ones who override moods with discipline rise above. They get the opportunities others don't because they show up when others don't, and they build reputations for reliability, consistency, and strength. While others are explaining why they couldn't, they're demonstrating that they did. That separation compounds over time. Acting despite feelings once might not change your life, but acting despite feelings hundreds of times rewires your identity and builds unstoppable momentum and creates outcomes that look extraordinary to outsiders. But to you, it will feel normal because acting despite feelings has become your standard. Acting despite feelings also trains resilience. Life is unpredictable. Circumstances change, challenges arise, setbacks strike. If you only act when you feel good, you'll collapse when adversity hits. But if you've trained yourself to act regardless, challenges don't derail you, they sharpen you. You keep moving forward in the storm, and that persistence is what builds unshakable success. When others stop because they don't feel like continuing, you're still building, still growing, still climbing. This resilience compounds, it becomes part of who you are. You stop asking yourself, that question disappears because your standard is action. It's also important to recognize that success is rarely about giant leaps. It's about consistent steps. And most of those steps won't feel exciting. They won't feel glamorous. They'll feel repetitive, boring, inconvenient. If you let feelings decide, you'll stop taking those steps, and without them, you'll never build the foundation for breakthroughs. Success belongs to those who keep showing up for the small actions, even when they don't feel like it. Writing one more page, making one more call, practicing one more hour, saving one more dollar. These little consistent actions add up into success over time. Acting despite feelings in these moments is the difference between having dreams and actually living them. Another truth is that feelings are not always aligned with reality. You might feel like you're not making progress, but action proves otherwise. You might feel like you're not capable, but action reveals your strength. You might feel like it's impossible, but action uncovers possibilities. If you trust feelings, you'll quit too soon. If you trust action, you'll push long enough to discover the truth. Success doesn't require you to feel unstoppable. It requires you to act when you feel ordinary. The people who change their lives are not superhuman. They're simply consistent in acting beyond their feelings. When you decide to act despite how you feel, you also take back control. Feelings can make you a victim because they're influenced by so many external factors. Weather, sleep, food, stress, other people's words. If you let feelings dictate, you give away your power to everything outside yourself. But when you decide to act no matter what, you take full control of your destiny. You say, I decide my actions, not my moods, not my environment, not my circumstances. That control is freedom, and that freedom is what success demands. Success belongs to those who live by standards, not moods. A standard is a decision made in advance about how you will act regardless of circumstances. Standards are what keep you training when it rains, working when you're tired, showing up when it's uncomfortable. Feelings change by the hour, but standards remain. That the person who builds their life on standards will always outlast the person who builds it on feelings. Success doesn't care how you feel, it only responds to what you do. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe.